Everybody reviews movies. Some of us peacefully in our sleep, and some of us horribly. And that's life. Let's talk about The Monkey.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Eye of the Storm podcast. Today, we're here to discuss The Monkey. But before we get into that, Daniel, will you give the people a movie recommendation?
So the best thing I watched last week is The Fortress, which is a 2017 Korean epic historical drama, which is about a historical event in Korean history where Korea was invaded by Imperial Japan, and the king of Korea took shelter in this mountain fortress in order to kind of stop the invading army while he waited for the armies to arrive from the south to reinforce him and take on the invading army. And he essentially held out an entire winter in this fortress town before eventually he had to give in, and Korea was then turned into a tributary to China. And this is like one of the big pivotal moments in Korean history, and this movie dramatizes that. And it's essentially a siege movie where most of the movie happens in the fortress and the king and his court and like various different characters who are part of this essentially have to find ways to kind of make it through this very harsh winter while they wait for the reinforcements to come that never coming. As far as I can tell, it pretty much accurately portrays the events as they happened, obviously dramatizing a little bit, but it's just a really good watch, and it's like an interesting piece of history that at least outside of Korea I don't think anybody knows about, and I didn't know about this before I saw this movie. But it's also a pretty good watch, good drama, good character stuff, and it's just a solid historical movie about an interesting event. So that's my recommendation.
That actually sounds really interesting, to be fair. And what was it called again?
It's called The Fortress.
And where can people find that?
So I watched that on Amazon Prime in the UK.
For me, it wasn't too much that I enjoyed watching this week. Just couldn't kind of get into anything. But I want to touch on Severance again, because this is a show that everyone's been really hyping up, really singing its praises. And for me, it's just not clicking. I don't know why. Everyone I seem to speak to, all of my friends seem to recommend it. And I'm now 6 episodes in, and every time I've got an episode on, I just can't help but think I would much rather be doing something else, or I'd much rather be watching something else than what I'm watching at the moment. And that's not to say that there aren't good characters in there and the whole mystery of what's going on isn't intriguing, but I'm just not enthralled by it. To be honest, I'm not engaged. I don't know whether it's like the tone of it, because you have an odd bunch of characters in there. It's a little bit sort of dystopian type of setting. I don't know what it is that just isn't gelling with me with the show, because it does have elements of a TV show that I would like, but for some reason there's just like a barrier there for me, and it's not really helpful. I can't quite put my finger on why I'm just so disengaged when watching it, but it's just my experience. Honestly, it's on, and I'm like either on my phone or not really sort of vibing with what's going on. So yeah, no real recommendation for me today. Just a little bit of a spiel on Severance, and I'm just to let the people know I don't understand it yet, and maybe I'll give it to the end of season 1 to try and get it. But yeah, it's not happening for me at the moment.
Is it just taking too long to get started, or is it just not that interesting, or what's the deal?
I feel like we're 6 episodes in, and I don't know enough about the sinister side of the corporation that they're working for. I know that there's, bad people in there, and again, the whole premise is, you go to work and you completely forget your personal life, and when you're in your personal life, you completely forget what happens in work. And even when they're in work, they don't really know what they're doing either. Again, there'll be stuff that pops up on the screen, or give them anxiety, or give them this mad emotional rush, and then it kind of moves on, and they don't really know what's going on. So I'm like, okay, 6 episodes in, I don't feel like I've gotten enough of the puzzle to really be satisfied with what's going on.
Yeah, I've been putting it off mostly because I ended up not seeing anything that really grabbed my attention, and it sounds like there's a reason for that. So, but maybe I'll check it out at some point.
Yeah, maybe I'll give it to the end of season 1, just to see how it concludes its first season.
Yeah, I really don't have the patience to invest hours and hours. I watched a couple of episodes of The Silo, made it maybe 5 episodes in, and just gave up. Just get to the point. Can we not? Like, they started out so well, but you keep piling on mystery and revelation that leads to 3 more questions. And I'm so over being strung along by shows. Like especially like Apple Plus shows seem to be the worst at this, but they're by far not the only ones. I can't wait for the trends to move on to something more concise. Like give us it's been what 20 years since episodic television. Can we try that again? Like it's a cliche to complain about that, but why not? Does everything have to be an 8-hour movie?
No, it shouldn't. Again, like a good TV show in each episode will have a good beginning, dilemma in the middle, and a resounding conclusion to the end of the episode that feels sort of satisfying.
Here's the other thing. I've had some stressful days at work recently, and in the evening I just want to sit down and watch something amusing for half an hour, and there's nothing. Right? I've been rewatching like 10-year-old comedy shows, like sitcoms and stuff like that, because there's just not much currently where I can just watch an episode and have just relax. It's not even about turning my brain off. Just relax for half an hour, be amused, and then go back to the annoying stuff, right? And like there's a complete imbalance here, right? Like I'm sure like somebody somewhere is making halfway decent sitcom. I just haven't found it, right? That like and if there are like there's maybe two and at some point you've seen them. I guess people just watch TikTok for 4 hours to unwind or something. But those of us who hate that kind of stuff, there's just no scripted entertainment in that sense. Everything has to be like an eight-part miniseries that takes that takes way too much brain power to really get into. If you just need to unwind for an hour, there's not much. Like I've been kind of rewatching like all these old sitcoms, and before I know it, 3 hours have passed, and I'm feeling better. And like it seems like this is, and am I the only one? I guess that's why like people rewatch Friends and The Big Bang Theory on Netflix over and over because that works. But I've already rewatched Bob's Burgers like 3 times this year, like in the past 12 months. At some point, it gets old, and I want something new. There isn't much new, right? So it seems this is massive.
I was gonna say Abbott Elementary. I know that you've checked that out. I don't know how far you got with that as well, but there's like small things, but probably not enough. And again, like you said, the current trend is these limited series or these 8-part mini movies. They're all trying to find the next big thing, the next Stranger Things or whatever. At the moment there isn't enough of just like you said, just like that lighthearted fun stuff that you can just switch on. Even things like Archer. Like I actually really enjoyed Archer. I don't know if you ever checked out Archer.
Archer's wonderful. Yeah.
Archer's great, and I haven't watched anything like that in a very long time.
Speaking of lighthearted fun, The Monkey,
yeah. So moving on. So on to the main discussion. Daniel, do you want to give the people a synopsis of The Monkey?
So The Monkey is a horror comedy about a cursed toy monkey that these two brothers in the 90s kind of inherit from their father. And every time you wind up the toy monkey, it plays its drums and then somebody dies. And that essentially begins to kind of hang like a shadow over this family as one person after the next in these two brothers' lives begins to die. And it basically warps their relationship and how they relate to their families. And they begin to develop an obsession with trying to destroy the monkey, which never quite works. And then it basically begins taking over their entire lives. And this entire thing then spills over into the next generation when 25 years later, one of them has a son who then gets dragged into this because there's no way of getting rid of the monkey. So that's basically the idea behind The Monkey. So what did you think of the movie?
This is a middle of the road movie for me. And I feel like, so essentially what it was a bit of a horror comedy, what it turned out to be. And for me, none of the comedy, I won't say none of the comedy, but the majority of the comedy didn't land for me. And it was really not grating at times, but it was just a bit too on the nose and a bit too in your face with the comedy. Like, and everything to do with the horror, I actually quite enjoyed. The whole, whenever the monkey would teleport to places, whenever it was, lurking in the shadows, even when someone unwinded it and it would do this thing where it would drop its face into a smile before starting to beat its drums, all of that stuff was working really well for me. And I feel like the opening, I think maybe like 20 minutes or so of this movie, where it was quite focused on that, was quite good. Everything to do with them being younger as well, when it was 2 younger versions of the twins actually first discovering the monkey, understanding what the monkey actually did and the whole dynamic between the two of them. I was like okay with it. I was like vibing with it, and then it started to try to be too funny or a bit too silly, and then I was just a bit like, okay, this is kind of conflicting with what I was expecting, and it was kind of conflicting with where we was at the start of the movie, and then the kills started to get more outlandish and more just ridiculous, and you could kind of see what was coming from a mile off. It felt, if I'm honest, it felt a bit like a knockoff version of Final Destination in this as well. And I know a lot of people have compared it to Final Destination already, but it's hard not to make that comparison with how the kills happen in this. So the main aspects of it, the kills, I wasn't entertained. The comedy, I wasn't entertained. The even down to like the themes and kind of what was going on with there, it felt a bit not misguided, but a bit all over the place, and it didn't really kind of know what it was trying to say for me, anyways. And we'll probably get into it, and we can contextualize some of it, but it just wasn't hitting on all the elements. And that's not to say that it's a bad movie, because I still somewhat enjoyed the experience of it. So I can see how people love it, and I can also see how people just are turned off by it. I was a bit somewhere in the middle where it turned into a horror comedy. I was amused at best with the comedy, not laughing at all, and I don't even like recall anyone in my theater laughing at all at the movie either. So yeah, it just didn't completely work for me, but I don't think it's a bad movie. I feel like there's entertainment to be had for people that are into that. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
So I thought we were going to have a consensus until you said it's not a bad movie. So I think I can go a bit lower than that.
Okay.
I think this is a bleak, misanthropic mess where
okay, you're going to be harsh than I am. Fair.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed the first 3 minutes where the guy wants to sell the monkey to a pawn shop, and it goes it escalates a little bit. I thought if the entire movie was like this, right, very like a very dark comedy, very gory, very extreme, like in its violence. I was actually smiling the first 5 minutes, and this was I really had a good time, and then it fell off a sharp cliff. So in past reviews, like more than once this year, I've complained about how movies are no fun. They all talk about generational trauma. They all want to talk about their relationship with their father. And guess what? This movie does that. This movie does all of that. And I think the tone is all over the place. It's not really a comedy. It's not really a horror. It's not all that gory. I'm not even sure the theme of generational trauma even goes very far. Like these different pieces are all in there, but they don't fit together. It feels like every part of this movie was directed by somebody else, and they didn't compare notes. And in the end ended up with something that didn't fit together. Like that's, at least that's how it feels. I think the violence is feels tacked on, like they feel like trailer shots. The comedy is not all that comedic. The heartfelt moments, or what are supposed to be the somber, emotional moments, feel pretentious and meandering. I didn't like any of those characters, even accounting for the fact that you're not supposed to like them. I was just not having a good time. Like from 20 minutes in, I was counting the minutes until I could leave, because I was just not having a good time with this. I think it's a mess. I think it's no good. Let's talk about it.
So I think first thing I want to kind of talk about is the tone and the tone shift that this has, because from the trailers that I saw, and I only ever saw the trailers in the cinemas when it was playing before stuff, it didn't ever feel like there was this comedic side to it at all. And that's not to say that it couldn't work in this type of movie at all, but it just felt like a lot of what they were trying, it's like for me, like the worst scene in this was the priest at the funeral. Like I have no clue what they were trying to attempt with that. I have no clue what type of gag or what type of joke.
That was the point. Even the priest sucks. All men suck.
Oh,
the women are kind of neutral, but the men are all terrible. Yeah. All of them are terrible fathers, terrible people. Even the priest does none of what a priest is supposed to do. Right? He offers no comfort. He offers no guidance. Nothing. He's just a stoner who somehow ended up in this job. Like in a vacuum, the guy is kind of amusing, but in totality, he's just even like one more way in which he just drags down the movie. right? Like in the same way that everybody else does. And he was at least funny. I think he was. That was.
You think it was funny? I don't know. I was not. I was just a bit like, what is going on here?
So what was funny was, so it makes no sense that he's like, it reads a bit like he's not a priest, but it's like he's like a sitcom character who somehow has to pretend he's a priest, and like the plot of the episode is, can he pull off an entire service without blowing his cover? But he's never sat in a church, and he does not have the skills. Like that's how that character came across. But some of his lines, when he's genuinely trying to console the family, and he just keeps making it worse, that was kind of funny, like in a vacuum. I've seen some very dark comedies, and I'm totally on board with like really bleak, cynical humor. I think the reason The Priest stood out to me was because there they actually attempted humor, and in nothing else is there even an attempt to do it. It's just all miserable and it's all terrible. It actually kind of reminded me a lot about, I don't know what the proper term for it is, but like one term for it is misery porn. Like late 90s, early 2000s movies about domestic violence or drug abuse or something where everybody sucks and life is just terrible. And, that's just how it is. It's that kind of movie. And I didn't like those movies then. I don't like them now. It's just like, movie doesn't have to be fun always, right? But like I can get enjoyment out of like really grim situations, and I didn't get any enjoyment out of this. It's just all around awfulness, and that's the point, right? Like this movie is not trying to be anything else, but I'm just saying I reject the premise.
And I feel like for me, the reason that the priest scene didn't work was, I feel like that was the first moment where it was like, okay, this is quite a silly movie, and we're just gonna kind of go for like some type of goofy comedy, because it felt not completely out of place. But then it goes back to
being just people being depressed. If the entire movie was like this, we would have a different conversation.
They don't immediately go back to being depressed, because you have the scene where the mother and the son's in, they're like dancing after the funeral and whatever. So like for me, it was like the first moment where the movie was being too silly, and then secondly, it was the whole that like no one was like reacting to any of the deaths. They really should have been throughout the movie, and I really wanted the movie, because again, like you said, the premise and the idea of it was really good about, this monkey that you're trying to get rid of because it's an evil monkey, and like whenever you twist it, someone's going to die. And I was so invested in that, and invested in the lore, and invested into why that was happening. And even when the monkey teleported from wherever it was into being in the car, going with them, I was so invested in it. And then it just started being a movie that I didn't want it to be. And I wasn't saying that might be on me, but no, that's on them as well, because you didn't advertise it as such. You didn't market it as this type of movie, especially coming from doing Longlegs last year, where Longlegs was a lot more serious in its tone and a lot more bleaker, etc. I was not expecting, more of the same or more Longlegs, but I wasn't expecting what we got from this movie.
And I really liked Longlegs. Like the first 80%. The ending was hot garbage because it turns into an exposition montage, and it drops or pretty much everything that was interesting in the first 80% kind of becomes irrelevant in Longlegs. So there were huge story problems with that, but that one at least had mood and suspense and interesting camera stuff, and this one was like none of that. Like I was really surprised. Like it looks similar to Longlegs in terms of visual style, but outside of that, I was a little surprised it was made by the same person. Actually, I think the big monkey in the room here is that this is like a big metaphor for generational and family trauma, right? So I guess we should address that. Did you think the metaphor worked?
For me, no, because I felt like it was trying to touch on too many different things. And none of them done really well, because you had the whole idea of the father not wanting to pass on this curse to his son. You've had the whole like theme of like life being fragile and whatever, and accidents happen, and just like death is death, and you can't predict when it's going to happen. You can't plan for it, you can't prepare for it, and you can go in any type of way. And at no point did I feel like any of that was really working in the movie, or any of it really made sense, because for the father, for example, it's like it'd been 25 years since anything had happened in there, and he's meant to be this like shut off recluse guy or whatever. So I don't know how he had a kid in the first place, because it seemed like he didn't interact with any humans at all. But given that he had a son, it was just to be like, I didn't quite Yeah, because if he knew that the monkey and turning the monkey is the reason that people were dying around him, what was the point of having this whole thing of staying away from your son and seeing your son only once every year? It just like it just wasn't quite making sense. Like even if you like look at the monkey as a metaphor of like your father carrying this curse and passing it down to you, and you not wanting to pass it down to your child, it just didn't. I wasn't understanding where they were trying to go with that and how they were trying to explain it, or what any of it really truly like meant in this movie. I just don't feel like it was explored well enough.
So I think the metaphor works about half the time.
Mhm.
So I think this is a really big problem with a lot of these movies. We had this in Wolfman where the metaphor was just completely broken. And here I think it's fractured, right? It still kind of limps along. It still kind of moves forward. But half the time it's just leaving a trail of blood on the ground. So the whole thing about inheriting, so the monkey represents the trauma, right? And so Hal and Bill inherit the monkey from their father, right? Like they don't want it. It's just kind of there. They can't get rid of it. Every time you think you've moved on, it shows up in your life again, and it keeps hurting the people around you. And there's really not much you can do about it. And Hal specifically is terrified of passing on that curse to his son, right? Like to the point where he basically becomes, like you said, a recluse because he's terrified of doing something that will get somebody hurt, especially his son. A couple of different things that don't work about this. One of them is that the monkey, you need to crank the monkey, like you need to wind up the monkey in order for it to do its thing. Why do this? Why not simply lock it in a closet and it's there? Maybe it's unsettling. Maybe you have nightmares. But as long as you don't wind up the monkey, nobody dies. I never really understood why, like within the logic of the story, why anybody would ever wind up the monkey. Specifically, Hal in the beginning, when he's like 12 and he does it for the first time. It's not entirely clear why he does it. Like he just sees the monkey lying on his bed. I think he was just bullied by these girls. They're like at school. He feels this compulsion to wind up the monkey, but it wasn't clear to me when I watched it why he did it. And then I didn't know why.
The second time was that when the babysitter died or when the mother died?
I think that was when the mother died, right? So I'm not sure who wound it up the first time when the babysitter died.
So the first time was by the other brother, and that was when they first got the monkey and they wanted to see what it did, and then they twisted it. The second time, the second time was after he'd been bullied. He kind of blamed his brother, and that's at the point where he felt like he could control it. So he winded it up and said, "Can you kill my brother?" And of course, the monkey doesn't take orders from anyone, and ended up killing his mother.
Right. Okay. But then the question is, how did he understand that winding it up is what causes the kill? Because at this point, it's a freak accident, right? But anyway, that part I didn't think was very specific or very, very well played out. Like I think there's some clues there, but the movie does not really like. I think the decision to take the step to actively make this happen should be a much bigger deal than what the movie made it. Like I think if you really look at it, maybe the pieces are there. But I think the movie didn't make it as clear as it needed to. And then secondly, why are they dragging Petey into this, right? Like it's really contrived. Bill basically says, well, somebody needs to keep like he wants to keep using the monkey until it kills Hal, right? Because he blames Hal for the death of his mother 25 years earlier. And so he basically blackmails Hal into letting Petey wind up the monkey, like in the hopes that it kills Hal. And he basically justifies this by saying it never kills the person who winds up the monkey. And so if Petey does it, we know Petey is not going to die. So, but why? Like, why not simply sit in your decrepit apartment and keep doing it until your brother dies? Like, there's no way it will ever come back to you, right? That whole thing is supposed to be a metaphor for generational trauma and how it gets passed on from one. Like, it kind of stays with a family, and it like. The next generation kind of learns that stuff from the parents, and so it perpetuates itself and all of that, right? But a metaphor is meant to actually be insightful about the thing it comments on, and it needs to actually kind of sell us on what's happening on a literal level too. And that, like what is portrayed in that standoff between Bill and Hal has nothing to do with how generational trauma works, because it's really more about like people internalizing that this is how you solve your problems, or this is how you relate to other people, or the victim looks for any way, like feels a sense of powerlessness in their life, and so they try to find other people who they can victimize, so that because that's the only way they can feel a semblance of control in their life. You know what I mean? Like that is how it actually works. And I do not believe that this maps to the monkey. And if it doesn't, is there a point to the metaphor?
Not completely. But to touch on, that scene at the end, and this might be a little bit of a reach, but this is kind of what I was thinking of. So, of course, they are twin brothers in this, and how I interpreted their lives sort of diverging paths, and them becoming estranged was, I think it's Hal, the one that became like a little bit more reclusive and kept himself to himself. Bill was like more reclusive and kept himself to himself, and then Hal was in his whatever fortress it was, trying to
other way
Bill.
around. Bill was the one who had been the complete recluse, and Hal was just trying to stay away from people, but he was still like he had a job and like he was still participating in society.
Yeah. Okay. So other way around. So how I actually viewed it was Bill was almost the trauma himself. So and let me explain. So Hal was not harboring, Bill, but Bill still existed out there. He kind of acknowledged. He tried to, to his son, he tried to say that he didn't have any siblings or anything like that. Tried to almost like not acknowledge that he existed. But in him, still being around, and him still having that memory, he was, again, kept himself isolated, kept himself away from people, didn't want to, pass this on to, anyone else. And that was stopping him from being a good father to his son, because he wasn't able to be present for that particular reason. And then
it doesn't make sense on a literal level, because the deaths only happen when you crank the monkey.
The monkey, yeah, which is fair, which is fine. And then in that particular scene, you can see how Bill has been so consumed about what happened to his mother, and is 100% blaming Hal for it, even though they were just kids and they didn't completely know what they were doing at the time. But it's
completely irrational, and that makes it make sense, because that sort of thing is not rational. And that is the one part I bought about it, that Bill simply could not move on, and he had to blame somebody, and there was nobody else to blame, so he blamed Hal. That part I have zero problems with.
Yeah, and subconsciously, Hal probably blamed himself as well, because again, he didn't talk about how his mother died to his son Petey, and then in that moment where they're having the discussion, they actually, he actually acknowledges, Bill, or and his feelings. He almost forgives himself in a sense, to say that I can't remember exactly what he says, but he almost kind of like forgives himself and says like it wasn't. Like it wasn't necessarily because of that, or they were just, I can't remember exactly what he says, whether it wasn't just because of that, or whether they were just kids and they didn't know what they were doing or whatever, but he almost kind of like forgives himself. And then in that moment, the monkey like slams on the drum one more time, and then Bill dies, and then him and his son kind of not ride off into the sunset, but they like ride off into the town. And at that moment, it's implied that, he's going to be a better father. He's going to, he's not completely disregarding what's happened with the trauma. That's when they decide to keep the monkey close. So at that point, he's acknowledging it, he's accepting it, but he's not letting it hold him back from being the father that he wants to be to his son. So that's kind of how, and again, it might be a little bit of a reach in terms of, them, Bill being the trauma that Hal was, trying to hide from, or trying to sort of stay away from. But to me, it made a little bit of sense in that sense of him needing his brother to almost die, him needing to get rid of that ghost and hold the trauma close to him, so that he was able to then acknowledge it and then move on and progress with his life and be a better father.
Yeah, that makes sense. I did have a slightly different interpretation, and that is that because they are twins, they're kind of two sides of the same person, and so their different reactions to the death of their mother were kind of two possible ways of dealing with that kind of trauma.
Yeah, that's
kind of my take. But yeah, no, what you're saying absolutely makes sense. Specifically, like a healthy way and an unhealthy way to deal with it, right? Like health.
I don't think I don't think either were healthy at all, and that's where I got the whole him needing to let go of his brother from, because even the way he was dealing with it wasn't healthy. And it's almost like his is more not the most logical way to deal with it, or like the most real example that you'd have in the real world of just trying to function in life whilst also carrying the weight, or not knowing that you're carrying the weight of this trauma behind you. Whereas Bill was the more exaggerated, the more kind of, off the hinges, completely gone off the rails and couldn't let go of the past, and it's completely like, turned him crazy or whatever. So, and then again, that's why he almost had to like accept and move on, basically.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I think I agree that hell is not exactly the healthy way to do it, but Bill is completely withdraw from the world, lash out at everybody, and just try to kind of deal with the loss by making other people lose even more. Like, that's the explicitly destructive approach to deal with it. Whereas hell is more about, like, he's shutting himself off from other people, but not completely, and he tries to function, at least, right? He's bad at it, but he tries. And then he becomes better, like, in the end, when he has more of a connection with PT, I would say. Yeah. So I think that part, is okay. It's just the role of the monkey, I don't think works. And I had a theory. Like, as I was walking out of the theater, I had this thing, that is this sense in the back of my head that something was wrong with this story, and something was not quite right. And so I went out and I bought the short story that this is based on, and I read it the next day, and every suspicion I had was confirmed. So everything that doesn't work about the metaphor is because it's different in the short story. So the stuff that kind of works, they lifted from the story, and everything they changed kind of doesn't work, more or less. So one example of this is, in the story, and just to preface this does not have to be like the story to be a good movie. But if you're going to do an adaptation of something with the same name, the same characters, the same basic plot beats, you're inviting comparison to the original. And also, if your version is worse than the original, then I've got some questions. So for that reason, I kind of went back to the short story and kind of just wanted to see, like, where the differences were. One of the differences is that in the short story, it's just a cursed object. It does not need to be wound up. Simply by existing in the family, it causes misery and death. And that is why it matters that you can't get rid of it. Because you can throw it down a well, you can bury it, you can burn it. It will keep coming back. It's like a curse in that sense. It's not really about trauma. It's not really about generational abuse or anything like that. They're not like a model family in the story, but they don't all hate each other. They're not all dysfunctional jerks. They're just more normal Stephen King characters. And so, for example, Hal and PT actually get along quite well in the story. And here they are completely dysfunctional, and PT is just a little shit. But
Bill, you mean? Yeah.
Like, sorry?
Bill, you mean, not PT. PT is his son.
Yeah, he's a little shit. He's nothing but attitude.
True. Well, you would be if you're kind of going up for adoption and you think your dad doesn't want you. Yeah, you kind of have this strange relationship with your father. You might have a little bit of attitude. I can cut some slack on that. Maybe,
but in the original, they more or less get along. But the important thing is that the monkey is in the family. You cannot get rid of it, and it being around causes the deaths. Like, this whole thing about Bill trying to just keep killing people in order to eventually get to hell for revenge does not happen. It's simply like there's just one death after the next in or near the family. And so Hal essentially formulates a plan together with PT to get rid of it. And they basically dump it in a lake, and that's it. And that solves it. That's basically how that ends. And so all this weirdness of the big showdown between Hal and Bill, where as I said in the theaters, I said, this does not work. I'm not entirely sure what you're getting at, but you're not getting there. It genuinely, like, this needed a couple more revisions. Like, it did not make any kind of sense to me. It was tedious and was long and was nonsensical. And that's because it's not in the story. Like, they did not have like a basis for it to work off. And so that is one of the differences. Another difference is that, like I said, you don't need to wind up the monkey. And that is why the whole thing about winding up the monkey doesn't work in the story. Like, the motive for why the monkey needs to be wound up and people why actually do it. We've talked about that, but it never quite made sense in the movie. I didn't think, like, why people did this, why they didn't just put it in a closet and forgot about it. Like, I understand you cannot fully get rid of it, but why not simply let it sit there and not do anything? In the story, it's simply just by existing, it causes these deaths, and it also taunts Hal psychically. Like, it really, like, worms its way into his mind and taunts him and degrades his mental state. So all of the things that I thought didn't quite might work and where the metaphor was broken in this, guess what? That's the part that they changed. And so that makes me not think very highly of the writers of this, because if in adapting it you broke the story, I don't care what your intentions were, it's not good work.
Yeah, especially in such a fundamental part of, you know, the monkey itself.
Yeah,
the
not a small detail.
The monkey. It's like a major component of the movie, and that's the part that has to work the most. Especially if you're not adding any lore or any mythos behind it, and it's just a monkey that we don't know, you know, too much about. We don't know where it's come from or what its deal is. Then the whole metaphor, especially, I think this is, you know, common knowledge as well, is that the director's parents died in sort of kind of freakish accidents as well. I think his mother was on the plane that crashed into 9/11. So if you're wanting to talk about, you know, trauma, and if you want to talk about, you know, these type of things, it's like the metaphor of the monkey has to be symbolic in some type of way, and has to be something that makes sense, and not just something that's just not, I wouldn't say it's an afterthought, but it's not thought about well enough in this movie as to how it works and how it correlates to that.
Yeah, like, and I didn't know that about the director. He's welcome to process that in his art, but then the art still needs to work, right? It still needs to be good. And, you know, that's the part where I think it falls short, where I just come up with I don't even see the connection between that and the monkey, right? Honestly, I don't really. Like, yes, losing your parent, like, in a tragic, random thing, that's tough, right? And I can see how that would stick with you, obviously, right? But I honestly don't see how that maps to this story. Because
I think it's more related to the deaths in this, in terms of how outlandish and how random and how wacky they are. I think that's where it correlates to more, because again, you could just be going about your day to day, and then suddenly something happens, and before you know it, your life's gone, and it just shows how fragile life can be, essentially. So I think that's where there is the relationship, but again, directly to the monkey and the trauma aspect of it, I don't see the correlation there.
Yeah, but the movie itself is very clearly about the generational stuff, right? Because it goes from father to son twice. Right? It goes from father to...
I would say as well, you know, part of it is as well about death itself, because like if you think about the mother's speech to the sons at the funeral, when she was just like, you know, we're all gonna die, basically everyone dies, I'm gonna die, you're gonna die, he's gonna die, this, that, and the other, and you can't, I can't remember exactly what her spiel was, but she was basically attesting to just how, like, death really doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter how you go or whatever like that, is that everyone's going to die anyways, pretty much. So I feel like that was like another kind of like through line that was like in there as well. Of course, you know, the family trauma stuff was more prominent throughout it, but there was this theme of, I think she said something like, is an accident or something like that, or is everything an accident, or is everything an accident, or something?
It's an accident, then nothing is, and if nothing is an accident, then everything is, something like that.
Yeah.
I almost dislocated an eye in the theater because I wrote them so hard. It just does not mean anything. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, yes, accidents happen. I'm sorry, but that does not mean the line is good. Sorry.
No, I did. I was a little bit confused as to what she meant to, in there as well. But it was just trying to tie it to the whole life, like just like anything can happen in life, pretty much.
But it treats that like a really profound idea, and it's like this has occurred to people before. Like, honestly, this is one of those things where, like, I don't want to be a jerk, which might come as a surprise to some, but this whole idea of like life, like things happen in life, like there's no meaning, like we don't deserve most of the things. Actually, this reminds me of a Babylon 5 quote, which is, "I take great comfort in the meaninglessness of life, because it would be truly horrible if we deserved all the bad things that happened to us." That's better, isn't it? Like, that's great. Like, honestly, like this whole idea of like I had this like anecdote time. When I just started working, like it was like a month into my first job, at like this company dinner, and we were like, there were like everybody, like the entire office was there, and I was sat across from the HR lady, and she said something along like, I think the topic came to like horrible like child diseases or something like that. I don't know, there was something in the news or something, and she said something like, everything happens for a reason. I really believe that, and I really had to bite my tongue to not say, okay, so a child that's born with like horrible birth defects and lives like for 6 months in agony and then dies, that's for the greater good. You really believe that? but I really didn't, like, I was still in my probation period, so I didn't say anything. But today I would, I think. It's like this entire, like, people have these hang-ups about, yes, terrible things happen in life, and, you know, we can't always deal with it. Sometimes it's too much. But that's reality, and people search for meaning or try to kind of impose an order on this, and it doesn't really help. And then we have to sit through platitudes like, if nothing is an accident, then everything is, or whatever the line was. It's like, can we not do more interesting things? Like why is this random sci-fi show from 30 years ago more insightful than this deep movie about, you know, generational trauma? Like is it that hard to have something constructive to say?
No, I wouldn't call this movie deep, to be honest. I feel like, again, it approaches, it kind of wants to be, but I feel like it approaches all of its topics quite surface level. I don't think it really gets deep into anything, and you're really having to try and put things together to make things make sense. But at the same time, I don't think your argument's too dissimilar to parts of the movie anyways, in terms of almost like life being meaningless. And, you know, I know it did try to say this whole like something in that particular line, but I feel like a lot of what's shown in this, so, you know, not just the deaths, but the way that people react to the deaths as well, like, it's just a normal any other Tuesday, pretty much. It's like,
well, there's the cheerleaders, right? Like, there's the spectators and the cheerleaders. And it's like that leads into the next topic, which is these weird tonal jumps. Like, so, like one scene we have these very somber, awkward conversations between father and son, who are trying, at least the father's trying to connect to the son, and the son is not having it, and the father doesn't know how to get through to the son. It's all very awkward and tedious. And then the next scene, somebody jumps into an electrified pool and turns into chunky salsa. And then there's like a couple of scenes later, there's like a bus full of cheerleaders, and then a truck drives past them and decapitates all of them. And then literal death on a white horse rides past. It's like, I'm sorry, how high are you, and can I have some? It's like, I'm sorry, like I can deal with absurdity. I can deal with like shock moments, right? If it's done well, it can be really impactful. It can be very effective. And here it felt like I said this earlier, like 4 different movies that were kind of stapled together. And I did not feel like it was really amounting to anything. Like, what exactly, like the cheerleader thing, yes, that comments on this whole thing about how, you know, society and media tends to make spectacle out of other people's suffering. I listened to a podcast today about the phrase "dingo ate my baby." You know what that comes from? So that's a case like in Australia, where like these 2 parents were out camping with a young child, and the child was sleeping, and the parents were out at the campfire, and then apparently a dingo. Like, the case was never truly solved, but basically apparently a dingo snuck into the tent, snatched the baby, and killed it. And they never found the baby, and so the mother was sentenced to life in prison for murder and was exonerated 4 years later. And then years after that, they found the remains of the baby in a cave somewhere, like in a dingo lair. And the phrase "dingo ate my baby" became a punchline. It's like it's a joke. It's what she is meant to have said after she went into the tent, checked on the child, and just found the tent covered in blood, and the baby was missing. She never saw a child again. And that's a punchline that everybody thinks is hilarious. Dingo ate my baby.
That's insane.
So that's kind of what this leans into, right? With the with the cheerleaders, right? But does it say anything, and does it work? Because it's just weird. Like, I don't think it really says anything other than, yes, some people will turn it into a spectacle, but it's a completely undeveloped idea, I think. It's just there. And then the fact that they get killed in a gruesome accident as they are celebrating other people's suffering. Like, I can see how that might be an idea at some point if you develop it, but I just don't think it was developed.
No, I again, it feel like it was a bit half-baked on there, because it's
just raw dough being slapped in our faces. Like, half-baked would be an improvement. Right? Like honestly, like I was sitting there and said, okay, I understand like the general direction that you're going into. I can kind of see what you're getting at, but could you do it smartly? Do it more smart.
Like, what's the significance of it being? I know it's, turning things into a spectacle, but like, what's the significance of choosing a cheerleader for that particular example?
Which I guess cheerleaders are like they kind of hype up the crowd and
Yeah.
kind of get the crowd into a good mood, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't really connect to very much. They could have easily been a bunch of influencers trying to make TikToks about the murder house or something. Like, it would have been the same thing, but just making them cheerleaders kind of makes it a little bit more wacky, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire thing is like all of the murders, right, or all of the deaths, like by themselves, they're kind of entertaining. Like, especially the aunt whose hair is set on fire, and so she runs head first into the mailbox. That was like a cool shot. But let's like,
do you know what the funniest one?
Yeah.
I was saying, do you know what the funniest one was? And it was one that we didn't even see, was when the two boys were trying to test the monkey box to see if it was actually the cause of people dying around them. And as soon as they turn it, it just cuts the picture of the uncle. Like, that was funny. That was funny for me. But I actually don't think I enjoyed many of the deaths, and I don't even think it worked. Like, if you think about it individually, like, even like the real estate agent that's trying to get into the cupboard, you can see from a mile off like what's coming with that, and I was just like, just get to the point with that.
It's probably the least interesting one. Yeah, but they just seem like they come from a different movie, and they seem to be there just for the shock factor, or like, who was it? Who was trampled by horses into? That
was the uncle. After
that was the uncle, right?
Yeah,
where he turns into a sleeping bag full of strawberry jam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like shocking, like the entire theater cringed when that was shown. And yes, it's a disgusting sight, but like outside of the shock factor, like, that's why I called them trailer shots earlier. Said, I don't know that it really like connects to anything really, or like what you said earlier about how this whole thing about like violence just happens, right? Like, sometimes you're in an accident, or you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and your life just over. But actually, if you're gonna do that, shouldn't people just? I've never seen somebody die, but I imagine it's very boring. Like, in the sense of just it's over. You know what I mean? Like, this stuff happens from 1 second to the next. Every time I've kind of injured myself or something, it's really something really stupid. It's not thematic. It's just like I don't pay attention for half a second, and then I regret it for days. Because I don't know, I heard something or something. You know what I mean? Like if you're gonna show the randomness and arbitrariness of suffering, shouldn't it be understated as opposed to so cinematic and so exaggerated?
You would think, and that's kind of like part of the problem that I had with the kills as well, was because I felt like, again, when it first started off, it made a little bit more sense, like the guy in the pawn shop at the start, and even like the mother's one was okay, like that one was fine, but then again, like you were saying, it just became too much of a spectacle, and it felt like they were trying to like outdo themselves every single time that a kill was happening, and it's just like, okay, you kind of lost the point of what these kills were, maybe even meant to be in the particular story, and then it just became about, like you said, trying to like fill trailer shots, and not like they weren't thought of as to how it relates to the story, more how can we impress people with it, is what I'd say on it.
Yeah, just the whole thing just seems really not thought through, right? Like the entire pieces don't really seem to fit together in that sense.
Yeah.
And I think, like, aside from just the general attitude of everybody sucks, and that is just life, that's already something I reject, especially in entertainment. And also, I think it's just pretentious. I think it's superficial. I think it's like very narrow-minded. Beyond that, none of the pieces really work together, right? Like, it's not. I don't know how to describe it without repeating myself, right? But like all the different things, like we mentioned, death just appearing. What was that about? I mean, like, it's just a complete stylistic break again, and it's just there because, like, in the absence of a better interpretation, I'm just gonna assume the director just thought it was cool. And that's the worst storytelling. If you just put in something because you think it's cool, as opposed to because you think it fits. Maybe I just didn't get it, but on some level, you kind of have to kind of sell me on it. And the movie just simply didn't sell me on any of it.
One more question for the people.
Yeah.
What did the movie sell you on? Outside of because I know you mentioned the start of the movie, so we're going to try and get something outside of the start of the movie. What did it sell you on, or what, moments did you... Because I don't think there was a point where you were almost back into the movie, but where you were like amused and you're like, okay, cool. They did something, interesting and cool there.
The monkey is kind of creepy. I'll give them that. They really found something that really matches the description in the short story. Like everything from the teeth and how it grins, and it doesn't have the drums in the story, but it has these cymbals that it smacks together. But the creepiness of it, I think that translated really well. I don't know, there's not much else. I like some of the deaths, and like not the most gory ones, but like the ones that are a little bit inventive. But they don't fit in that movie, I don't think. Tonally, stylistically, thematically, it just doesn't fit. And so I'm not gonna it's not gonna get points for that. Yeah, it's like not much, honestly.
No, I agree with you. I think when it was a lot more serious and when it leaned into more of its horror aspect of it is when I was enjoying the movie the most. Like you said, the monkey was extremely creepy, especially when there was like the pauses just before he did like the beat down on its drum, and you just knew it was going to spell bad things for people around the boys. But there wasn't enough in there of the movie, unfortunately, and it just again decided to go with this more wacky approach. And whilst I was probably a lot less negative on it than you was, it still was a bit grating and a bit jarring, being dragged in multiple directions and hitting one tone and then like having something completely different come up in the next scene. It was very jarring in that sense. So again, just to like cap from the positive, I think we both really like the monkey and its presence in the movie. And I feel like
here's the thing, the monkey has to stand for something. Like I've seen many stories with like cursed objects or like ironic punishments or like stuff like that. And the monkey is pretty milquetoast when it comes to that, right? He's a little bit creepy, but there doesn't seem to be anything ironic. It doesn't twist your intentions. It doesn't promise you anything and then punishes you for your hubris. Like a lot of these cursed object stories have that kind of thing going on, where there's a connection between the object and the effect, and the intention, like the object, the effect, and the intention with which it's used. And all of that is just completely missing. And I think I think it worked just so much better in the original version, where it's just a curse that you cannot get rid of.
No, I agree. I agree. There was a huge sense of feeling like there was something missing in the mystery of the monkey, like a point and some type of understanding as to how it behaved. Again, the whole aspect of wanting to use it to kill someone that you feel had wronged you, or you want to kill someone specifically, and the monkey rejecting that, it gone.
Here's an idea. What if you have to use the monkey in order to please your parents, and it just hurts people as a result? The children keep using the monkey. I don't know how. Like if you workshop this, you can find a way. But what if the monkey is being used because the children have learned that using the monkey is what pleases the parents, and so it keeps just causing more harm? Something like that. There's something twisted going on with the children using the monkey because they learned from their parents that you use it to solve your problems, but they don't understand how to use it, or they don't understand that it was never a good idea, or something. That would tie back into the generational family trauma aspect of it, right? Because it's something that the next generation learned from the previous generation, has internalized that unhealthy attitude, and just keeps passing it on, and it self-perpetuates itself. Like something like that. Like it's not a full rewrite or anything, but it's just an idea. Like there are ways, I think, to make this monkey more interesting. If that's what you want, if you want to turn it into a metaphor for like internalized abuse and how it perpetuates itself through the generations, there are ways to make this work, I think.
If you think about it enough.
Yeah.
Last thoughts on the monkey before we forget about it and forget we ever watched it in 2025.
Yeah, honestly, like this is one of those disposable ones. Like could have been something, but isn't. 5 out of 9. Like the pieces don't work together. It lacks a point. The metaphor does not sing. It's just underdeveloped, not very imaginative, not impressive.
I will agree. I think it's missold as this, strong horror movie. They threw in comedy elements to it, which completely missed the mark for me in this movie. The themes and what they were trying to get at were, again, undercooked, half-baked, just not well thought out. And again, it's like, again, when I said it wasn't a bad movie at the start of this, it doesn't, lack some amusement to it, but it's just one that you'll completely forget you ever watched, to be honest. So it does enough to sort of keep you, well, not Daniel, but it did enough to keep me entertained enough throughout the movie where I didn't completely hate it. But again, when you kind of like pick it apart, it's just not a good movie at all.
And you would think if they just keep making these, one of them is going to be good, and I'm still waiting. Like Smite was pretty good, but that's 1 out of 5 that we've seen, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
No, not a good hit rate.
Oh, and just to add, my rating is actually officially 6 out of 10 for this. I guess that's everything for today then. So let us know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Did the horror comedy work for you? Did you enjoy the comedic aspect of it? Were you left wanting a little bit more from the monkey? Let us know your thoughts down below in the comment section. And of course, if you loved everything that we talked about today, tell a friend. And if you hated everything and you couldn't stand our conversation, tell an enemy. We are the Eye of the Storm podcast. Ciao.
Bye-bye.